Hello everybody and welcome. Just a quick note to let you know that we'll be getting things started shortly. We're just waiting on a few people to join, so just hang tight for now. Okay, just another quick heads up that we'll be getting things started in about 1 to 2 minutes. So just hang tight as we're waiting for people to join. So if you don't have your speakers on, please turn them on. However, I guess that doesn't make a lot of sense because if you don't have your speakers on, you probably can't hear me. But regardless, we'll be getting started any minute. Okay, it looks like we have a pretty great turnout today. Awesome. I see the team from Beta has registered, so hello. Hello to you guys also. I see that JBR has registered as one guest, but apparently you guys are all in a boardroom. So I assume you're all together, so a big hello and welcome to you guys, and hope you guys got your lunch that we sent to you. And anybody else who wasn't aware, we are sending Uber lunches to do virtual lunch and learns for everybody. So just to let you know, we will be getting started probably in about 15 to 20 seconds. Just as your final warning. Okay, so we'll just start this up and say hello and welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Mike Ream. I'm the president and CEO of EnviroBond, the makers of Organic Lock. We've put this webinar together to do a bit of a deeper dive into Organic Lock and how it can work for you. Now, before I do get started, please note that you can gather detailed information further from our website at organiclock.com. That's organic-lock.com. Also, please note that we are continually producing new content that's designed for you. We're well aware that there's a ton of information out there, so we're working very hard to create original content that's actually of interest to you, our community, which is generally speaking landscape architects, designers, engineers, park staff. Along with that, basically you can use our social media platforms, which are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. These are platforms that we're asking you to subscribe to where we have that original content. We do promise that it'll be worth your while. So an example of this type of information is our case study initiative, which is basically following projects from their genesis all the way to their completion. So if you do have a project that you're working on, please let us know. It might qualify for the case study because ideally we'll be sending out cameras to document the different sections and parts of a project all the way from beginning to end, and also coming across different elements of problems or situations where problem solving is required, and hopefully creating some awesome content that can be essentially a mini documentary of a project. So if you do have a project in mind, please send it to us at our email address, which is going to be the best way to detail a project. So if you could send it to us and include any kind of project information, any details that you might have, that would be great. The email address is info@envirobond.com. So even if this is just a project that doesn't qualify really for a case study, our team of technical experts are here to provide solid and continual support. So just send us information of a project. It's going to be definitely worth your while because we'll create a file on it and we'll be able to follow it along. So if you do have any problems or questions along the way, we'll already know about that project and really be able to help you. So just send us an info@envirobond.com email and we'll be able to support you from there. That being said, if you do have any questions throughout the webinar process itself, or anything that I'm saying or showing, please feel free to jump in and basically send us a question or a comment on the chat section. And we actually find that these questions that come about are actually in themselves so beneficial to the process, because chances are it's a question that somebody else on the webinar is actually having. So if you can just send us a message or type into the chat, the way to do that is on the right hand side of your screen. You'll see a chat icon, and that icon can be pressed where you can actually type your question in, and we'll answer it along the way. We have our staff on here on the webinar that will be able to type answers to you right live. Anything that's too big, we'll address at the end. Anything that's a little bit more detailed, send us an email at info@envirobond.com. That'll be the best way to give us any kind of detailed information. So we do intend to do future webinars, so please feel free to send us any suggestions on any kind of topic that you think would be relevant. We're trying really hard to build a community that includes a two-way communication, so please contact us with any information that you think would be viable for a new type of webinar, or any kind of information that you'd like to see us dive into. That would be a great way for us to kind of add more original content and create some interesting interactives. So I guess now that I'm kind of walking through that preamble, let me start just jumping into the actual webinar and say that Organic Lock is the strongest organic binder on the market today, and we're quite proud of that. It's designed for stabilizing aggregate surfaces. Its functionality allows you to create natural, aesthetically pleasing, permeable surfaces that hold up to extreme conditions. So this webinar is created to teach you what is Organic Lock, what are the keys to a successful installation, how to maintain your installation in your projects in the future, and then also what project options are available to you. Okay, so what is Organic Lock? It's a patented powdered binder made from a renewable plant resource and a mixture of proprietary additives. It's designed to be blended with crushed aggregate to create natural-looking pathways and surfaces. The binder locks the aggregate in place to minimize erosion and minimize project site maintenance. It's water permeable, ADA compliant, and qualifies for LEED points. The patented formula was developed from more than a decade of research by agricultural scientists from the University of Guelph, as well as the Federal Research Lab at Agriculture Canada. It's been used on successful projects around the world. From the pathways at the Brooklyn Bridge Park, to the Disney Amphitheater in Shanghai, China, all the way to the green roof on Toronto City Hall. See, as the water permeates the aggregate, it gets absorbed by the Organic Lock binder and creates a gel that coats the aggregate particles. The gel expands in size and holds the aggregate particles together, which significantly reduces the erosion. Once the gel forms to its maximum swell volume, it's unable to take on any new water, so the excess water passes directly through the system, down into the groundwater table. Over time, the gel releases its water through evaporation into the atmosphere and through percolation into the groundwater table, recharging the system to be ready for the next rainfall. On top of its ability to resist erosion and to allow water through, the structure of the aggregate combines with the gelling strength of the Organic Lock binder, creating a stable surface that passes ADA wheelchair compliance. LEED points are available for a variety of means, depending on the specifics of your project choice. And because Organic Lock is activated and reactivated each time it comes in contact with water, it makes for a simplified maintenance program. This performance and success has been established through great R&D. More than a decade of research has been completed at agricultural universities as well as federal research facilities with a focus on biopolymer sciences and their interaction with aggregates. The binding strength of Organic Lock is closely studied in the laboratory and the field for a variety of different properties. Erosion resistance, strength and stability, and permeability analysis are on the front lines of this testing. The core focus for the development of the Organic Lock formulation is on its ability to resist erosion due to excessive rainfall. EnviroBond uses a customized rainfall simulation device that provides consistent and comparative stress to each sample studied. By preparing samples that are subjected to a controlled rainfall simulation, EnviroBond researchers have been able to understand the relationship between the binding strength and its ability to resist erosion. This has led to a patented formulation, making Organic Lock the strongest organic binder on the market today. Organic Lock blended aggregates derive much of their strength from the aggregate itself. The gel works best with the natural interlocking ability of the well-graded crushed aggregate particles, which create an optimally structured surface. Only aggregates that meet optimal gradation guidelines, which specify a detailed matrix of particle size distribution, are approved to become organic lock blended aggregates. Performing a sieve analysis experiment on potential aggregates creates a strong understanding for expected performance in the field. Following these guidelines allows for a wide variety of options taking advantage of local aggregate sources. In recent years, permeable surfaces have steadily become more relevant. Concern for the environment, especially water resources, has massively contributed to their popularity and promotion around the world. Because of this, water surface permeability is a significant issue for surface material choices. The water permeability rate of organic lock blended aggregate, determined by an independent ASTM standard double ring infiltrometer test, shows a rate of 0.85 to 1.2 inches per hour, allowing it to be installed in sensitive areas where water needs to get through. There are three key elements to achieving a successful installation using organic lock: aggregate choice, blending, and following the installation guidelines. It's always ideal and recommended to get your pre-blended organic lock aggregate from an authorized organic lock licensee. This way, you'll be getting an approved aggregate blended by a professional company that ensures the quality you're looking for. To find the closest licensee, you can visit our website under the Where to Buy section. Now, if you're getting your pre-blended organic lock aggregate from an authorized organic lock licensee, the aggregate sourcing and organic lock blending will already have been taken care of. So the following tips on aggregate and blending are really just for educational purposes. Now, in areas where a licensee is not available, it's possible to choose a local aggregate yourself, but the aggregate sourcing and subsequent blending will become your responsibility. Our team is fully available and can work with you in the process, but it's important that you understand the big ticket items that you're looking for. It's important to find an aggregate that is well graded, meaning it has an even amount of each different particle size throughout its profile. Our design specifications include an optimal particle size distribution range that you'll want your aggregate to fall within. From a structural standpoint, you're looking for a crushed aggregate with an angular to subangular particle shape. Key spots to look for are the fines of the aggregate, most specifically in the material passing the number 100 and 200 sieves. It's important that this material is present, as the fines create that grit that ensures optimal surface area for the binder to adhere to. Now, if you're getting your aggregate from an organic lock licensee, the material will already be coming in a pre-blended form, most likely delivered by a truck. However, if you are sourcing and blending the aggregate yourself, you'll need to know the following tips on blending. Once you have the right aggregate, you'll need to blend it with organic lock powder, which comes in 50-pound bags or 2,000-pound totes. If you're having it blended on or off-site yourself, the following are the key blending tips. A. Weigh the aggregate into a batch size that you plan to repeat. This allows you to use the same calculations moving forward. B. Organic lock is a fine powder, so precautions need to be taken to avoid loss of material as well as dust inhalation. Blend the organic lock into the aggregate at a rate of 34 pounds per ton, introducing it in slow and methodically metered rates. C. Blend this in until you've reached a thorough and homogeneous blend. If you're questioning if you blended it enough, keep blending. D. Once you've blended the organic lock into the aggregate, you'll need to move to the next step, which is the addition of water. Blending can be accomplished using many different methods. Small projects can be done with a portable concrete mixer. Portable projects can be done with a volumetric mixer or even a ready-mix truck. If you're unable to complete a mechanical blend and you have the room, bucket blending can be accomplished successfully if you have a clean pad to start with. However, extra attention needs to be taken here to ensure a full homogeneous blend. A cleaned out asphalt plant can help you do large volumes. And finally, the pug mill is a meter conveyor blend, and it's definitely our preferred method that's used by our dealers. The overall blend needs to be a thorough and homogeneous mix, with the blending times varying from method to method. The general rule of thumb here is to err on the side of overblending. In the mixing process, the fine powder of organic lock coats the entire profile of the aggregate. Mixing water into this pre-blended aggregate is the last step before the material can be installed. It can also be the first step when the material is delivered from a licensee already pre-blended with organic lock. When the aggregate material is pre-blended with organic lock, it needs to be saturated with water before it can be installed. Adding an optimal amount of moisture activates the powder into a gel that forms between the particles. To achieve the optimal water content, it's important to have an understanding of your starting moisture percentage. An appropriate ending moisture content will be between 8 to 10%, but it's best established with a field test. The best thing you can do is figure out the exact water to add on the first batch, then simply replicate it for each subsequent batch. The optimal way to establish ideal water content in the mixed product is with a snowball test. The snowball test is the act of picking up the blended aggregate and using both hands to form a snowball. Start your first batch by adding small metered increments of water until you achieve a successful snowball. If the ball is too dry, it's going to crumble. If it's too wet, you'll see a moisture glaze or sheen, which is telling you there's too much water. What you're looking for is that spot just after it crumbles, but before that moisture creates a sheen type texture. Another good way to test it is a step test. Simply step on the ball you've created. On the left, you can see that the water sheen telling you it's too wet. The goal is a sample on the right, which maintains its form, but is not slick on the surface. If you find yourself with a batch that is too wet, the best thing you can do is add further dry material into the mix to dilute the moisture and return to a proper snowball. Now that you've got a proper aggregate, homogeneously blended with the proper amount of organic lock and water, the next step is the installation. Now, the key elements for a successful installation are overall watershed management, subgrade and base construction, surface watershed management, spreading and compaction, and finishing on the final spray for the completion of the installation itself. Watershed management is a simple but very important element of any successful installation. Managing the surrounding water will dictate the longevity of your surface material. As with any surface, you'll want to avoid any sitting water through proper slope management, but you also want to prevent continual flowing water in reoccurring and ongoing spots. This can be avoided through the use of swales, crowns, culverts, and drains in the surrounding environment. The first step of installation is to excavate and properly prepare the subgrade to be ready for the installation. Excavate the proposed area to a depth related to your installation goals, which will allow for the proper depth of base aggregate, followed by the organic lock blended aggregate. Before adding in your base aggregate, you'll want to compact the subgrade to a 95% modified Proctor density using a plate tamper or vibratory roller. Once your subbase is compacted, you will install your base layer at the depth level required for your particular traffic type, as found in the related specifications. The base material type is listed in the specifications as your region's DOT recommended crushed granular road base. Example of this would be 3/4 crusher run or granular A material, with the most important aspect being the inclusion of fines in the aggregate material itself. Again, you're looking for well graded. In situations where the base layer calls for greater than 4 inches, you need to install the base in 3-inch lifts. Be sure to apply a fine water spray in between lifts to create cohesion while optimizing the compaction. The compaction should be done with a vibratory compactor or a minimum 1-ton vibratory roller and needs to achieve that 95% Proctor density. Now, with the successfully installed base in place, you can now install the organic lock blended aggregate to the depth required in your specifications related to the expected traffic type. If you're installing up to 4 inches deep, you can install in one lift. If you're installing greater than 4 inches, you should do this in equal lifts with a minimum of 2.5 inches and a max of 4 inches per lift, making sure with an additional light soaking of the blended aggregate in between each lift. It's always important to understand the effects of Mother Nature surrounding a project. Things like topography, ground cover, and canopy cover can have significant impacts on water flow over your projected surface. It's important to guide the water flow where needed and avoid low areas, as sitting water on a pathway system is never ideal. Proper surface watershed management is best achieved by installing a crown or a cross slope to divert rainfall runoff to flow off the side of the surface. Now, an important note is to be aware of any man-made water sources that may have an effect on the area. things like sprinkler heads that are facing your surface can have detrimental effects with long-term water pooling. It's heavily advised to adjust this flow away from the product's surface. The maximum slope that is acceptable for an organic lock blended aggregate application is 20%. For slopes that are 10% or greater, we recommend installing runoff diverters, which are materials such as railroad ties, metal troughs, or equivalent embedded in the pathway at a 45-degree angle to prevent water from gaining momentum, which can accelerate washout damage. To determine how much product you'll need for your project, you can use the product calculator on the organiclock.com website under the Resources tab. If you know your square footage and traffic type, just go to the Resources section and drop down to Product Calculator. Select your traffic type and enter your square footage to establish your product quantities. In order to get to the proper compacted depth, understand that the aggregate will typically compact 20 to 25% depending on aggregate type, gradation, and moisture content. For smaller projects or tight spaces, it's possible to use a rake and a wheelbarrow to spread the aggregate. However, extra precautions should be taken to ensure depth consistency over the entire project, as a man-made installation can be prone to error. On larger projects, it's ideal to spread the material using a consistent mechanical means. Now, although using a paving machine is going to provide the most consistent results, this may not always be available to you. Where this is the case, back-dragging the blended aggregate can be done with a front-end loader or a box cannon attachment. Since the material is being pulled behind machinery this way, there can be compaction issues as the tires drive over the material. This is something that you should carefully consider and minimize wherever possible. Although there are multiple ways to spread the blended aggregate, for larger projects, the use of a paving machine, such as an asphalt spreader, is definitely ideal for consistency and efficiency. Using an asphalt spreader allows you to have the premixed and prehydrated material delivered in a truck directly to the spreader. This material is dumped into the spreading, where it is then disposed at a set height on the prepared base. The asphalt spreader provides no additional compaction on the material while it moves along, dispensing at that consistent depth of product. For larger projects, you can arrange larger trucks to continually feed the spreader as it moves down the installation, and simply follow it with the roller. Because the water is already mixed into the aggregate, it's immediately ready for compaction after the spreading has occurred. However, if during the spreading the moisture levels of the aggregate drop because of ambient temperatures, examples being a really hot or dry day, it's advised to lightly spray the surface to increase the hydration to optimal levels before compaction. The compaction is done with a minimum 1-ton roller. This should be a static compaction and not a vibratory one, as the vibration can disassociate the bond. If, during compaction, you're finding significant ruts, the material is moving around like jello, or perhaps it's sticking to the roller as it moves, these are all signs of too much moisture. In this case, you should simply allow time for some of the water to evaporate out of the mixture. If it doesn't have enough moisture, you'll be seeing lines and cracks consistently. To fix this, you can provide an even and light spraying of water over the entire area of issue. Then, make 4 to 6 passes with the roller, until you no longer see any lines on the surface. Pay close attention to the installation specifications to make sure you compact in lifts for any installation above 4 inches in depth. Now, not all installations are going to be textbook and simple. Hard to reach areas should be compacted using a hand tamper or equivalent. Now, to complete the installation, you'll want to do your final soaking. The purpose for this is to make sure that any of the top layer material that hasn't properly hydrated gets a top-down soaking to make sure it's activated and can settle into the rest of the mixture. Last comes the curing time, or in better terms, the time before first use. This actual time depends on things like moisture content of the aggregate, climate, canopy cover, and the depth of the installed material. However, we generally do say that 24 to 72 hours is the standard, but the longer is always the better. Now, to establish timing for the first use, simply walk on the material and feel it's firm enough to allow traffic. If the material is too dry on the surface but still feels a bit spongy below, then it's a good idea to leave cure another day. Directly after the installation, The aggregate surface will be smooth because of the weight of the fresh compaction. As the surface weathers, though, with the traffic and time, the larger particles of the aggregate will loosen on the surface and create a natural look and feel, which is often sought after. With this in mind, it's important to realize that all outdoor products require some level of maintenance analysis. The loose aggregate particles on your surface should not exceed a quarter-inch in depth. If the material exceeds a quarter-inch in depth, redistribute the particles over the entire surface, water to a 1-inch depth, and compact with a roller of no less than 1,000 pounds. You can remove grass clippings, soil, debris, or organic matter by mechanically blowing or hand raking as needed. When plowing snow, use a shoe lift or a rubber baffle on the blade of the plow to lift the blade up a quarter-inch off the surface. Extra precautions should always be taken after the first snow and the last snow of the season, as this is when the material is most prone. Below the loose surface particles, the firmed materials should be stable to resist erosion and support the intended traffic. If this lower level material incurs damage, you can generally do a small scarification fix. These areas can be repaired by soaking, then scarifying with a rake, and compacting using a roller or a hand tamper. The organic lock gel activates each time it comes in contact with water, which allows for the blended aggregate to be physically broken up, reworked, and returned back to its initial state. This self-healing nature allows for a simplified maintenance procedure that leaves no sign of the maintenance itself. For example, if you have to run an irrigation line below your finished pathway, all you need to do is add water, dig the material up, put down your irrigation line, spread the material back in place, then water and compact it back to new. Areas needing rejuvenation can be dug up, thoroughly mixed with new organic lock, and reinstalled. When material needs to be added in an existing project area, it's best to use a source of the same aggregate you started with. Pre-blend it with organic lock, then replace it back for a seamless result. Our detailed architectural specifications are separated into traffic types and border types, and they can all be found on our CAD details site, as well as our own website at organiclock.com. Anywhere you're looking for a natural-looking, permeable surface that will stand up to traffic, you can use the Organic Lock product. Think of it for high-slope applications, green roof applications, courtyard applications, heritage sites, artistic design. Notice the embedded pieces of natural stone throughout these projects. The organic lock will actually firm up around the embedded stone, which helps it keep it in place. Edging options are very much open to interpretation. Some designers prefer a natural bleed while others prefer a clean line. A few examples of your edging options are poured concrete, natural grass, plastic edging, aluminum edging, and wood chips, just to name a few. Other uses for organic lock include accent borders, garden edge barriers, wheelchair traffic, golf cart traffic, foot traffic, vehicular traffic, heavy vehicular traffic, natural parking lots, private residences, creative courtyards, high-profile locations, to low-profile areas off the beaten path. We always recommend taking advantage of local aggregate sources. We also recommend working with a growing number of licensed organic lock dealers across North America to get a pre-blended material that's been tested and approved to the proper standards. In locations where a local dealer is not available, Envirobond will work with your team to obtain a local option. We can also work with our existing dealer network to provide you with the additional aggregate options that can be shipped directly to you and your project location. This concludes our overview webinar. This presentation, as well as any and all additional detailed material, can be found on our website at organiclock.com. And with that, I'd like to thank you once again for joining us today. I know this is a little bit of a different kind of system of getting material to you, but we've had tremendous success with it, and we hope we can do it even more. So with that being said, I'd love to welcome any kind of questions you might have on anything that's been talked about or shown up until this point, because we do really appreciate that level of two-way communication. So I'll take the first question and go from there.